Hi, I'm Dave. It's the Cyderbaby pod, and today I am speaking to Jordan Red. Hello.
Good
Hello.
morning.
Morning.
It's basically the two Daniels or the two Dans. How do you tell yourself apart? Come on.
Uh,
Daniel Lee and Dan B. So
yeah,
Yeah.
Daniel
mostly.
and Dan. That's the way we go.
Yeah.
Okay,
Uh,
tell me about the band and when did all this start?
You want to go, Dan?
yeah, sure. So, we met through a mutual friend of ours at a barbecue. We were out in the middle of a field, and and I met Dan. I think Dan. I think you knew of me from some bands that I was in, and it wasn't. It, it wasn't until like so we met, and then it was like a year later. Was it a year later or 2 years later, Dan?
Probably. Did we meet 2012? I reckon we met quite
Yeah.
early, like 2012. So it wasn't for till like actually 2017, start of 2017 when we started. So that's 5 years.
Yeah, Dan,
Um,
Dan messaged me. He needed a vocalist. He was basically Dan just sort of took things into his own. Dan wanted to just get things started, and was sort of tired of relying on other people. So he was just like, right, I'm just going to start something of my own. Needed a vocalist. Knew that I was singing with other bands and that, and he was like, do you want to do? Would you like to sing for me? And I was like, not really. I don't really have the time. But then he sent me over a lot of the stuff that he was doing, and I was like, well, you know what? Against my better judgment, yeah, I really like what you're doing. And we had a chat about some things, and then we got into to writing vocals together and talking over sort of the direction that we wanted to go in. Found that we were sort of in the same kind of headspace
Mm.
in a lot of things, and that was it really. We worked very very hard in the early days, like really honing our sound. And you just got to look at like the sort of the cutting room floor of the demos that we haven't used to sort of see just how high the quality of the music that we were discarding was really. And some of the sessions we wouldn't, we'd spend like 8 to 10 hours.
Oh, his sound's gone.
is he gone? He's back. Is he back? He dropped.
You
I'll
dropped the
carry on.
sound. Yeah, go on.
So we were. So yeah, like Dan said. With the thing with bands is you're always waiting on other people and got fed up of waiting on other people. So we actually just booked studio time with Ramesh
Yeah.
early 2017 before we had any songs, and we started writing that January. And the songs we recorded, Beautiful Monsters and Get Up, because we originally were just gonna. The original plan was to do some singles, build up
Yeah.
the material, go out and gig like a normal band. And then it's sort of we thought we'll get an EP together. So over that year, we recorded probably 4 or 5 songs, something like that. And then,
Yeah.
you know, COVID eventually happened a long way down the road, and we were releasing our songs. So it ended up being okay. We've got this whole album, but we're not. If we just release that album now, it's kind of that's it for till this is over.
Yeah.
So we took that choice to just put out single after single after
Mm.
single. Through 2020, we did. I think it was just Freak Show in 2021. We wrote some more songs, recorded some more because we realized we put out half the album. We put
Yeah.
out 6 singles. We've got 10 songs, so we probably should record some more. So we finished the album in summer 2021. We did Awake and Smell My Blood, and then obviously planned that release, and it came out November 2022. So it was a long process, but we sort of honed our sound and put it out when we were ready.
Yeah.
I
I
guess.
mean, it seems to be quite a, I'll say, fashionable thing to do now is put out loads and loads of singles, get your name about. So you're in people's minds every 6 or 8 weeks when a single comes out, and the album is quite basically a collection of greatest hits because it is a banging album.
Thank you. I mean, we were writing songs, so it's like it's quite cool because some of them have their own. They're a little bit different. They sound a bit different, and that's fine. But we were just writing the best songs we could that we wanted to
Yeah.
have in our set, and then putting them out. And I think any new band like in our position, you've got to kind of release things like real snappy, just one after the other to get any kind of traction. Because if you just, like we said, if you just put out an album, it's one thing, and
Yeah.
everyone's moved on. Even in 2020, there were some really, really good albums from some big bands. Obviously, they had that album, they've been sat on it, and
Yeah.
they still released it, and they were great albums. But the thing is, because there was so much music
Mm.
coming out, they didn't really get to have that album cycle, and then it probably didn't have the impact it would have, even though it was great. So
yeah.
we didn't
I just
want
think
that to happen.
there's a lot of weird stuff happening in the industry. Like it's not what it
Dan,
once was.
Dan, we're in a massive stadium with huge reverb and echo and slapback.
Oh, sorry. Hello. Sorry. Let me save that. Right. Sorry. Going through my door here. I mean, I think it's a massive thing. There's lots of different things going on in the industry, and with bands that are not really backed by labels these days. And when you're independent like us, when you don't have a major label or even or any kind of label pushing you and saying, right, hey everyone, here we're going to release 3 singles, and we're going to get you loads of traction this way, and we're going to push it down people's throats, get you into all these like places, you know, get tour support, push you on with the big bands, all that kind of stuff. And and then you can release your album and have loads of songs which other people haven't heard of yet. We don't have that luxury, so we were like, okay, well, the songs have a shorter amount of like lifespan, so then you have to release another one. Like, and people go, oh, I think I remember that band Jordan Red. Didn't I hear something from them like a month ago? Whereas like, you know, in the past it was very, very different. The industry isn't what it used to be. Everyone's panicking to see and this is like before all the lockdowns happened. Everyone was confused back then.
Yeah.
And now everyone's going, well, what is the state of the industry now? And then people going, well, we don't know, so we're just going to cancel our tour. We're going to cancel our tour. We're going to cancel this. We're going to cancel that, and then we're just going to wait, and we're going to hunker down, and we're going to see. And all that is, it's a race to the bottom to see who actually survives this time. The amount of bands that we know on our level and even above who've just said, you know what, we're calling it a day because we can't survive. We can't survive. We've got bills to pay. We're not we're not being creative. We're infighting, all the rest of it. Some bands that I was sure were going to absolutely blow up just withered away and called it a day. And it was a very, very sad time. Very sad time.
Music has become a perishable product now. With that particular song, like you say, it's got a shelf life of a month, 6 weeks, something like that. And then that's it, it disappears. So you've got to keep going one after the other and just keep your name at the forefront of people's minds. So yeah, exactly what you're saying, really.
Yeah, and I think people's attention span it's just it. You know, we've all got these supercomputers in our hands and demanding our attention. And the amount of times when I've heard, I'm like, going, hey, that sounds really nice. At 7, 8, 9, 10, and I scroll and I catch myself doing it sometimes. I'm like, how bad has my attention span got? As someone who proclaims himself to be a music lover, who proclaims himself to be someone who lives and breathes music, and just goes scroll, and then I'm gonna like watch like a stupid meme or something else, or someone, you know, posting up a funny, you know, a dank meme, or, you know, a stupid gif or anything like that. You know, it's absolutely ridiculous how dopamine driven we've become as a species, really. And it is concerning, and especially even if you look into the science of like songwriting, because it used to be like you had to get to the chorus within a minute, then it became 45 seconds, then it became 30 seconds, then the first use of song title had to be within first 10 seconds. Why? Because you need to hook the people in, because otherwise they're gonna be gone. And it is worrying on a larger scale. I think ultimately, you know, you got to be true to yourself, but then it's about how you actually present yourself to an audience who you know will benefit from listening to your music. And when I say benefit, I don't mean, you know, I mean like enjoy your music. I mean that we are entertainers. We're out there to entertain. We are out there to have a message, and when you, and that in itself creates community, creates good feeling, and that is what the world needs right now, with so much division and so much confusion out there. Like, as entertainers and as musicians, that is our job to bring, you know, to bring our gifts to the fore and to present people with, and I hate to say product, but something which people are interested in and can really connect with.
Thinking of connections, I mean, the best way to get people knowing your songs is gigging. I mean, I assume you've gigged already. I don't really know, so
We've had the fortunate opportunity to do 2 gigs so far. Because our first gig was February last year, and it was 1 day short of 2 years since we released Beautiful Monsters because of the situation. We'll call it the situation from now on. So yes, we played again the end of the year around the album release, and that's probably a focus for this year. We've got Steelhouse coming up, Made of Stone, which we'll be announcing shortly. So don't put this out till that's gone out. But yeah, there's more stuff being talked about coming in. It's just a case of getting that scheduled and getting out there, because it's like Dan was saying. I mean, the whole world has gone crazy on short form content, TikTok and Reels and whatever, and it's like there's a lot of songs being produced that are great for a 30-second or 15-second reel or TikTok video, and the rest of the song, where is it? If you go and listen to it, it's not there. It's just this viral sound, and that's what people are everyone's sort of chasing the dragon. That's the industry, isn't it? Rather than having songs that connect with people and go over well live, which I think we're really happy with all the songs that we've been putting in the set. They've been connecting with people and they feel great. So that's like mission accomplished for that, because you don't want any songs dragging in your set.
You got a full band then, I take it?
Well, me and Dan predominantly, and then we've had Connor and Dave from As Lions playing bass and drums, and it's just a case of scheduling with who ends up being our rhythm section live, depending when it comes in, because that's the battle at the moment. It's just making sure dates align. But they've played in the studio, and we've had some other guys play with us in the past, and I mean that's how we're going to take it forward, because at the end of the day, when we started this, like we said earlier, it's easier with less people involved, to be honest, to get things moving. So me and Dan write the songs and organize everything, and then pull people in when we need them at the moment.
Okay, so Hands That Built the World came out in November last year.
Yep, November 11th actually.
Yep. So it's available on streaming formats, I assume, iTunes.
Yeah,
Spotify.
CDs. CDs. One of these.
Look at
Take
that.
a look inside. Yeah, check that out. It's upside down apparently. There we go. So you can get those from our store. There's some HMV Yeovil, Bristol, Westfield, London have them as well. But the best place is probably to buy direct. It's the easiest. And then we've got digital downloads. You can stream it on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, all the usual places. YouTube. You can, maybe with this video when you put it up, you can pop the link to our link tree below it or something, because that's probably the easiest thing to do.
I usually do actually. Just try and put a few links. And
can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hear me now? You can hear me. Okay, good.
Were you speaking?
I was just having some issues with one of my computers here.
Okay. Right. Well, now he's got his sound sorted out, I think we'll wrap it up.
Awesome.
but Dave, out of interest, where do you see it with gigs and live gigs? Have you been out to many live venues much of late?
I get out to as many as I can, but living in Devon, it's always a long trek. I mean, I'm going to Blackstone Cherry this weekend, and I've got Epica and Apocalypta and Wheel on Monday, Tuesday, something like that next week. So yeah, the ones that are struggling, the smaller venues, like the 200 to 400 cap kind of people, they're only drawing in sometimes 24 people, or it will fill a venue. It's very hit and miss. You just don't know how many people you're going to draw. And I don't think it's COVID anymore. I think it's people have become comfortable living at home. It's cheaper to buy beer at home or in the supermarket and consume. A couple of pints for an entry ticket to a gig is nothing really. I mean, when you think you go to a pub and buy a round for 5 people and you haven't got any change out of 30 quid, and you think, well, you could go to a gig, be entertained, and have a couple of beers and enjoy yourself.
Yeah, there's a lot of people moaning about gig tickets, obviously, of bigger artists. I think Madonna was the recent one, and they're extortionate almost. But you go, well, there's plenty of bands playing up and down the country you could go out and see for like you said, probably a couple pints, something like that, a tenner, whatever. And it's just getting people out, isn't it? It's getting them, giving them enough to want to leave their house and go and see some bands. I do think, like, you know, bands banding together, having 2 or 3, you know, really, really good acts on the same bill is probably the way forward. Like, really sell it and just make an event of it, rather than just all this. It feels very atomized, I think, in a way, at times. Like, so.
But I mean, there's some good venues. I mean, Blackpool, you've got the Waterloo Bar, and you've got Gravesend, which is Leo's. They always seem to be packed. So there's obviously a good crowd, sort of like north and south of the border, it's north and south of England, shall we say? And there are other venues that will draw a good crowd, but there are some places that have been forgotten, like the Southwest, where I am. Some bands come down. I mean, Anchor Lane are coming down in January, and they're doing February, and they're doing 2 dates. They're doing Bridgewater and they're doing Plymouth. Now, yeah, I love the band and they're really good live, but they're going to struggle to sell enough tickets to cover their costs in those 2 venues, I think, because they're too close together. And it's been years. It's been a known fact that bands miss out the Southwest, so you haven't got that draw of people, that wave of people coming into venues all the time, which is a shame.
Do you count Bristol still as Southwest? Because I mean, I think bands would be more inclined.
Bristol's Bristol.
Well, yeah, because I mean, Bristol's the bigger place. Like, I mean, I'm in the Southwest, and it's like, if I was to pick anywhere, it probably would be Bristol, maybe Exeter. Cardiff is not the Southwest, but that's not that far from here either. So it's like, those are the ones that you would probably sort of schedule and go, okay, I think we're gonna draw a decent audience there.
I mean, Bristol, there's so many venues in Bristol. There's like Louisiana, there's a Thekla, then you've got the Griffin, and then you've got the O2. You know, it's all, you've got venues right across the spectrum for capacity, and you've got to pick that right venue to suit your niche crowd, shall we say. Cardiff and Swansea have got a good reputation. I mean, you say you come down to Exeter for a venue. I mean, you quite limited. You've got 200 capacity at the Cavern.
The Cavern's probably the only one I can think of, and I mean, I don't know Exeter that well, but that's the one that springs to mind.
Phoenix is probably 400 to 500 or something like that, which is just around the corner from the Cavern. But you know, it'd be nice, actually. I think traveling festivals is probably a way to go in the winter. Like you say, 3 or 4 bands getting together, I think. But
I think it's going to have to happen, because I don't think we have the same problem as we did last year, where everyone was touring at once. That seemed to be part of the problem, because obviously, you know, people weren't relying on their ticket. You know, they didn't think a show was guaranteed, so they stopped buying tickets just because stuff kept getting rescheduled. So I think it's building that trust back up, and with the audience, and getting them to buy.
I think I mean, traveling festival, so 3 or 4 bands. So what sort of venues, like the mid-level venues, like the 200 to 300 sort of caps, and then what? Because then you've got to take care of each band. I mean, how much? I think it's a matter of like cost. Are you then treating like a £20 a ticket sort of thing for these 4 bands?
I think so. I think that's a fair comment.
Yeah, because
sharing backline and stuff like that is.
Yes. I mean, it just you almost have to get as musicians, you have to be like economists, because I did a tour back in 2012, and it was a free entry tour, and I said to our label boss at the time, I was like, you have to be kidding me. I was like, and I became an economist, and I sat down and I did a number crunch. Like I itemized everything. Yeah. And I was like, look, I'm being conservative here. I was like, you're gonna cripple us financially. And he said, and I said, we're gonna have to pull out. And politically, it was not a good decision for them, because they'd made agreements outside of anything that we'd had anything to do with, and I find that that's been ultimately the death of a lot of record labels, is because they don't include the bands enough, and they make some they handle the bands very, very poorly, and You know, it goes back to stuff like Frank Zappa said, like back in the day when he was like, you know, initially you had businessmen that took a chance on bands, and then but they didn't understand what they were doing. Then they might get lucky, and then you get in guys who think that they know what the industry is and know what the audience wants, and suddenly you give way too much power to a hippie who doesn't actually know what on earth he's talking about, and then you start getting this sort of bastardized version of what people think the industry is, when the people that are living it, which are the bands, are the ones that are getting left in the lurch and being left with the bill at the end of it. I mean, I've seen some of the receipts that I've been handed like over my career. I'm going, how much money did you spend on that? And they're like, oh, $5,000. Why did you spend $5,000 on a press campaign in Europe? Are we touring there? Well, no, we thought we'd take a punt. Take a punt? You're going to make us pay that money back in record sales. Do you realize how much it's going to take? And plus, you're taking part of my royalties as well. Yeah. And you're divvying that up. You want some of my merch as well? No, sorry, you can't have that. Like, and in the end, it becomes this waiting game until you fall off the timeline that they've actually got control of you, and then you can start to renegotiate some contracts. And it's a brutal death of that. And we, you know, I think, you know, some of the bands that I've been in with like the last death rattle of some of the mid-level record deals, and now you know, labels want a piece of everything because there just isn't the money that there was in the 70s, 80s and 90s to go around. So so everyone's struggling, and everyone's very confused, and a lot of people are very, very angry. And then you just find that people are giving their music away for free and sticking it all on Spotify, and going, yeah, here's a whole album. Oh, but please buy the CD. And it doesn't make any sense. People are like going, oh, you're paying for music. I have guitar students that have never paid for a single piece of music in all their lives. They think that people that buy music, they think that they're stupid.
Yeah.
They're like, you pay for music. Like they laugh. They laugh in my face when I say that, you know, people used to buy records. They're like, why? It's all on YouTube. I'm like, you don't understand, kid. Like, there was a time before YouTube. I was around when the internet came out. Really? You know, it's a whole different world now.
Yeah, and you're much younger than me as well, so yeah.
We're gonna have to get Dan. We're gonna have to get you the Lars was right T-shirt for wearing on stage.
I'm sure the thing is with Napster, I'm sure there was some guy like going, hey, excuse me, sir, there's this thing called Napster. Hey, get out of here, kid. What's this Napster, crapster bullshit? We don't need to hear about this. We're making money. Yeah, but they're handing out our music for free. Now get out of here, kid. We're making money. It'll never take off. And then, you know, this is the thing. It's like the rich guy. You say to the rich guy whose business has gone bankrupt, how did you go bankrupt? And he goes, well, first, very, very slowly, and then very, very quickly. and that's what happens. They don't. And the ones to be hit first was music because of the file size, and then it was movies because the file size was bigger. And the people that were ready for it because they saw this tsunami coming was the computer games, because the file size was this big. They're like, we've got to put stuff in now. The technology is good enough to get files this size through, and it's starting to get this good. Before it gets this good, we have to be ready. So then they had key codes, all kinds of like subscriptions, all things like this. And the computer game industry was totally ready for it, which is then why you get musicians like going into licensing deals, trying to get music into computer games and stuff to scoop in royalties and all the rest of it. It's a different world out there. And I do think it is the whole evolve or die scenario. But the trouble is, it's like you have to evolve at such a rate now and have your finger on so many different pulses and then your fingers in so many different pies that to be a professional musician. I mean, ironically, I became a professional musician because of lockdowns. Like all this stuff you see around me here, I live stream every night.
Yeah.
Because of it. And but it's meant that I'm a different type of musician than I used to be. So, you know, I've evolved in a very different way, and but you know, ultimately we want to be out playing in front of people, but it's just about how to do it without having to take out massive bank loans and maxing out credit cards and all the rest of it.
Well, it feels very much like it's a better idea to be almost selective with the live side of things and have a really good, you know, 2 or 3 shows rather than just, you know, take a gamble and then realize at the end of however long, you know, 20, 30 days that, you know, no one's been eating on, that was a bad idea, because that's probably not the best use of time right now, I don't think, unless unless there's the support for it.
Well, also the promoters are expecting you to do like almost like 90% of the work on
90, 95,
well, yeah,
99,
maybe more. Yeah,
some.
that was very conservative. That
yeah, they put their name to it. Come on.
Yeah, they did a Facebook post, guys. I mean, what do you expect? What more could we have done?
I've come across bands, smaller bands, that have taken like 2 weeks off of work and gone around the country. And Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, they're dead nights.
Yeah,
and they're not going to work. If for a smaller band, you've got to concentrate on the Thursdays, the Fridays, and the Saturdays. That's my view anyway. Where people that's ready for the weekend or on the weekend.
Yeah, I think it's always been that way as well. Any tour we've done, it's just those are the nights that are usually busier. Sundays aren't usually a good idea either.
No, everybody's too hungover.
I found one of my old tour laminates from back in 2004, 2005, and we played over 30 days. We did 28 dates, and it was insane. I think I almost lost my mind at the end of it. But I remember that was a time when we could do that. It was tough. It was brutal. I mean, we were sleeping on floors and all the rest of it, but there were people at the shows. But looking at it now, it looks like a nightmare. Like I could never dream of doing that now, and not just and it wasn't that I could even physically do it back in the day, because it was so brutal on all of us. Like we were half dead by the end of it. It was sort of like this sort of diminishing returns, really. But there was a time, like, you know, at the turn of the century. Oh God, how does that sound? At the turn of the century, in the early 2000s, where we were touring like that, and people were going out to shows. But again, it was sort of before, it was like right on the cusp of, there wasn't all these different platforms in place to take away from the live experience, I guess, or to give this faux representation of what the actual live experience is. And bands had to be, you know, they just had to, if you wanted to go see a band again, they just had to be good. There wasn't a great deal of technology backing them up. It was like, well, can you play the guitar? Yeah. Can you turn your amp up really loud? Yeah. Do you have a good tone? Yeah. Does a drummer smash the hell out of the drums? Yeah. And do you look half decent? You know, and have some energy on stage? Well, yeah. Okay, cool. We'll come and buy a ticket, and we'll go on tour with you. So
okay. Yeah, but how many TikTok views, Dan?
Right, on that note, Daniel, Jordan Red, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Cheers, mate.
Absolute pleasure.
Great.
Thanks.